Karen stormed into my yard, screaming that my daughter's birthday party was illegal under HOA rules. Within minutes, she threatened to call the police. But what she didn't know was who our guests really were. The morning sun was still soft, spilling golden light across the cul-de-sac when I started setting up tables in the front yard. My daughter Emily was turning 10, and for weeks she had been counting down the days to her party. We'd kept it simple: balloons, streamers, fold-out tables for cake and snacks. Neighbors had promised to stop by with their kids. For Emily, it was supposed to be the happiest day of the summer. But happiness doesn't last long when you live under an HOA with someone like Karen. Karen lived 3 houses down, in a 2-story colonial with perfect hedges and a permanent scowl. She wasn't on the HOA board officially, but you wouldn't know it from the way she strutted through the neighborhood, binder in hand, quoting bylaws like scripture. Over the years, she'd complained about basketball hoops left in driveways, grass an inch too tall, cars parked in the street. Everyone dreaded her knock. I heard her before I saw her. The sharp clack of sandals on pavement. Then the unmistakable tone, shrill, clipped, carrying across the cul-de-sac like an alarm. "What do you think you're doing?" I turned, still holding a roll of tape in one hand. Karen stood at the edge of my yard, arms crossed over a pastel blouse, eyes narrowed on the half-inflated bounce house behind me. "Morning, Karen," I said carefully. "Setting up for Emily's birthday. We've had it on the calendar for weeks." Her lips pursed. "You can't do that. HOA rules strictly prohibit large gatherings on common property. Noise, traffic, parking. It's all in Section 14. I pointed to my driveway and yard. "This isn't common property. It's my lot. Everything's within the property line." She scoffed. "Don't play dumb. A bounce house. Extra cars? Music? You're disrupting the peace of the neighborhood. And I, for one, won't tolerate it." I felt Emily tug at my sleeve. She had been helping me hang balloons. Her wide eyes darted between us, the joy of the morning already dimming. "It's my birthday," she whispered, barely audible. Karen heard. Her gaze dropped, and for a flicker of a second I thought she might soften. Instead, her chin lifted higher. "That's not my problem. Rules are rules. If you cared about your neighbors, you'd teach your daughter that rules matter more than personal whims." Something in my chest tightened. I set down the tape, stood straighter. "Karen, it's a birthday party. We're not bringing in a marching band. A few kids, some cake, that's it." She snapped her fingers toward the decorations. "Take it down. Before I have to escalate this." I could feel the eyes of neighbors on us. Curtains twitched. A lawnmower down the street cut off mid-run. Everyone knew how Karen operated, but no one ever stepped in when she picked her target. "Karen, please," I said, still trying to keep my voice level. "We've already cleared this with the HOA secretary. I sent an email 2 weeks ago. No objections." Her eyes flashed. "Don't you dare lie to me. I am the HOA around here. And you did not get approval." I pulled my phone from my pocket. "Want me to show you the email chain?" Her face flushed red. "Don't get smart with me. I've shut down bigger violators than you. If you think some little family gathering gets a free pass, you're mistaken." Emily's lip trembled. She whispered, "Daddy, is she going to cancel my birthday?" I crouched, brushing her cheek gently. "No, sweetheart. Nobody's canceling anything." Then I looked up at Karen, standing stiff and self-righteous at the edge of my grass. "This is happening. You don't get to ruin a 10-year-old's day because you're in a mood." Her nostrils flared. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, me planted firmly in my own yard, her practically vibrating with indignation. Then, slowly, she reached into her oversized tote bag and pulled out a folder. "I knew you'd try to sneak something like this. That's why I brought the bylaws." She flipped to a page, stabbing a finger at the text. "Right here. No temporary structures exceeding 6 feet in height without prior approval. That bounce house? Over 6 feet. Case closed." She said it with the satisfaction of a prosecutor delivering a final blow. I straightened, exhaling through my nose. "Karen, you're unbelievable." "No, I'm right," she shot back. "And as of right now, this party is canceled. Tear it down or I'll make sure you regret it." Emily gasped, clutching my arm. Neighbors whispered louder now, emboldened by the drama unfolding on the street. I spotted phones angled from windows. Karen thrived on this kind of audience and she knew it. "You don't scare me," I said finally. "And you don't run this neighborhood. This party is happening." Her smile was thin and cold. "We'll see about that." She pulled out her phone, tapping furiously. For a moment, I thought she was scrolling through more rules to wave in my face. Then I saw the screen light up with a call. She pressed it to her ear. "Yes, this is Karen from the Oaks subdivision," she said loudly for all to hear. "We have an unauthorized gathering happening right now. Yes, a bounce house. Loud music. Dozens of cars already. Total violation." Emily's eyes welled. "Daddy." I hugged her close, jaw tight, pulse hammering. Karen wasn't calling another HOA member. She was calling the police. And as her voice rose, demanding immediate action, I realized this was no longer just about balloons and cake. It was about to become something much bigger. Karen lifts her phone higher, glaring at me as she says into the receiver, "You'd better get here quick. This party isn't happening." Karen didn't lower her voice as she spoke into her phone, pacing my front lawn like she owned it. "Yes, officers, right now. A large illegal gathering. Noise disturbance. Safety hazard," she rattled off, her tone dripping with self-importance. She shot me a glare as if daring me to stop her. Emily clung to my hand, whispering, "Daddy, the police are coming?" I squeezed her hand. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're not doing anything wrong." But inside, my pulse quickened. A 10-year-old's birthday was turning into a full-blown HOA showdown. The commotion had drawn out nearly half the block. Curtains were pulled wide open now. A couple of neighbors stepped onto their porches, arms crossed, watching. A few whispered to each other, heads tilted toward Karen, not me. That's the way it always went. No one wanted to be her next target. "Unbelievable," muttered my next-door neighbor, Mr. Ramirez, shaking his head as he watered his lawn. He gave me a sympathetic shrug but made no move to intervene. Karen ended the call with a smug tap. "They're on their way. You've got 10 minutes to start taking this down before they arrive." I folded my arms. 10 minutes? For what? Cake and balloons? You're out of control, Karen. Her smile was tight, satisfied. "You think you're clever. But when the police get here, they'll see exactly what I see. A violation of HOA bylaws and public safety." Emily's eyes welled up again. "Daddy, I don't want them to cancel my birthday." I knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "They won't, Em. Trust me." Karen huffed. "You're filling her head with lies. Better to tell her now than let her be humiliated when the officers shut this circus down." The word humiliated lit a fire in me. This wasn't just about rules anymore. She was targeting Emily. A child. I stood, jaw clenched. "You need to leave my property, Karen." She lifted her chin. "Oh, I'll leave. Once I've done my duty as a responsible neighbor." She waved the folder again like it was a badge. "Section 14, Section 22, Section 31, you're in violation of all three." A ripple of whispers spread through the little crowd forming. Parents who had come early with their kids lingered on the sidewalk, unsure whether to set down gifts or retreat. One little boy clutched a wrapped box with bright paper, staring at Emily like he wanted to help but didn't dare. Emily tried to smile at him, but her lips trembled. "See what you're doing?" I said to Karen. "You're scaring children. Over a bounce house." "Don't twist this," she snapped. "This is about order. About respect for rules. If every family did whatever they wanted, this neighborhood would fall apart." "Or maybe," I countered, "it's about control. Because that's all this is for you, control." Her cheeks flushed deeper. She opened her mouth to reply when a voice called out from across the street. "Karen, it's a birthday party, for crying out loud." Heads turned. It was Mrs. Lopez, arms folded, standing on her porch. "Don't you have better things to do?" Karen stiffened, taken off guard. "Excuse me, Maria, but I'm protecting our neighborhood from..." "From what?" Mrs. Lopez shot back. "Cake crumbs? Balloons?" A few chuckles rippled through the crowd, quickly stifled when Karen's eyes darted around, promising retaliation for anyone who sided against her. Emily's hand squeezed mine. She whispered, "Maybe we should just cancel." That broke me. I crouched again, looking her in the eye. "No, this is your day. And I promise you no one, not even Karen, is going to take it away." Behind me I heard Karen's phone buzz. She glanced at it and smirked. "They'll be here sooner than I thought." She tucked the phone into her bag. The atmosphere shifted. Neighbors leaned closer, whispering. Some pulled out their own phones ready to film. Everyone knew Karen loved drama, but this time it was bigger. Police involvement meant there'd be a record, and maybe, just maybe, consequences. Karen turned back to me, smug as ever. "Tick-tock. You've got 5 minutes left." "Or what?" I asked, arms crossed. She smirked. "Or the police will do it for you." Emily whimpered softly, burying her face into my side. I hugged her tight, glaring at Karen. In the distance, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of sirens. The whispers grew louder. Someone muttered, "She actually called them." Another shook their head. "Over a kid's birthday? This is insane." Karen's eyes glittered with triumph. "Here they come. Finally, someone who respects the rules." I straightened, heart pounding, and looked down the street at the approaching red and blue lights. My daughter's balloons fluttered in the breeze, caught between celebration and disaster. This was no longer just a neighborhood squabble. It was about to become official. As the sirens grew louder, Emily whispered, "Daddy, are they going to arrest us?" The faint wail of sirens grew sharper with every second. Emily's small hand tightened around mine, her knuckles pale as she whispered again, "Daddy, are they going to arrest us?" I knelt, brushing her cheek. "No, sweetheart. We haven't done anything wrong." But inside my chest burned with anger. A 10-year-old shouldn't have to ask that question on her birthday. Karen stood tall at the edge of the lawn, practically glowing. She adjusted her blouse, ran a hand over her hair, and smirked at the crowd now gathered. "Finally," she said to no one in particular, "order will be restored." Neighbors shifted uneasily. The Lopez kids shuffled behind their mother, who folded her arms tighter. Mr. Ramirez shook his head, muttering in Spanish. Even the parents who had come early with presents looked uncomfortable, their children clutching gift bags but not daring to cross the lawn. And then the cruiser turned onto our street, lights flashing red and blue against the pale houses. The siren cut off as the car rolled to a stop in front of my driveway. 2 officers stepped out, one tall and broad-shouldered, the other younger, with sharp eyes scanning the crowd. Karen wasted no time. She practically sprinted toward them, heels clicking against the pavement. "Officers," she called out, voice high-pitched with triumph. "Thank you for coming so quickly. This man is hosting an illegal gathering. Noise, parking violations, and," she jabbed a finger at the bounce house, "dangerous, unapproved structures. Total violation of HOA codes." The taller officer raised a hand. "Ma'am, slow down. One at a time." He glanced past her to me, standing in front of the decorations with Emily pressed against my side. "Whose residence is this?" "I live here," I said, stepping forward, keeping my tone calm. "This is my property." Karen cut in, her voice shrill. "And he's breaking multiple neighborhood bylaws." I told him to stop, but he refused. "I warned him you'd be involved." The younger officer frowned. "And what exactly is happening?" "It's my daughter's birthday," I said, gesturing to the balloons, the cake table, the handful of neighbors holding presents. "A small gathering. We cleared it with the HOA secretary weeks ago." Karen scoffed, arms crossing tightly. "He's lying. There was no approval." I pulled my phone from my pocket. "I've got the email chain right here. Want to see it?" The taller officer nodded. "Yes, please." I scrolled quickly, finding the email from the HOA secretary confirming our event. I handed the phone over. The officer read it, brow furrowed, then passed it to his partner. Karen's face reddened. "That doesn't matter. You can't have that," she stabbed her finger toward the bounce house, "without special permits. It's over 6 feet tall. Section 14 clear as day." The younger officer glanced at her, unimpressed. "Ma'am, HOA bylaws aren't criminal codes. We're here to enforce the law, not your neighborhood disputes." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some neighbors smirked. Mrs. Lopez raised an eyebrow, clearly savoring Karen's stumble. But Karen wasn't done. "This is against the law. Public nuisance, noise violations, safety hazards. These things collapse all the time. What if a child gets hurt?" The taller officer sighed. "Ma'am, there's no noise violation, no traffic obstruction, and I don't see any hazard right now. Unless you have evidence of immediate danger." "I am the evidence," she snapped, her voice shrill. "I'm a member of this community, and I won't let him endanger us." Emily buried her face into my side, whispering, "She hates us, Daddy." I hugged her tighter, anger flaring in my chest. "Emily, she's wrong. You've done nothing wrong. None of us have." The taller officer glanced at me sympathetically. "Sir, do you have proof that this event was cleared with your HOA?" "Right here." I showed him the printed sheet from the HOA newsletter where birthdays could be listed if submitted in advance. Emily's name and date were right there. Karen's eyes widened. For the first time, her confidence cracked. But she recovered quickly, hissing, "Those newsletters aren't binding. He's twisting things." The younger officer narrowed his eyes. "Ma'am, unless you have concrete evidence this family is violating city ordinances, there's nothing for us to do here." Karen's face turned scarlet. "So you're just going to ignore this? Let him break the rules? What kind of officers are you?" Ones who enforce the law, the younger officer said coolly. The crowd chuckled softly. Karen whirled around, glaring at them. You think this is funny? When someone gets hurt, don't say I didn't warn you. Emily peeked up at me, her eyes wide and glistening. Can they make her stop? Before I could answer, Karen stepped back toward the officers, her tone turning dramatic. Fine. If you won't act, then I'll escalate this myself. I'll take this to the HOA president. I'll file a complaint with the city. Oh. Her words cut off when she noticed movement at the end of the street. Heavy footsteps. Boots striking pavement. The crowd shifted, murmuring. Heads turned. Even the officers paused, looking down the block. Karen's voice faltered. What is that? I turned too, and saw them. Marching up the sidewalk, shoulders squared, uniforms pressed crisp under the sun. A group of men and women in full dress blues. The guests of honor had arrived. Karen's face drained of color as the Marines closed in, their polished shoes pounding against the pavement. She stammered, What is going on? The sound of boots hitting pavement grew louder, steady, deliberate. Every head on the street turned. Even the officers paused mid-question, their hands resting loosely on their belts, eyes narrowing down the block. Karen's voice cracked. Who are they? I didn't answer. I just bent down to Emily, who was clutching my shirt with both fists. Her wide eyes brightened as she spotted them. Uncle Matt, she squealed. At the front of the group was my brother, Matthew, a decorated Marine who had just returned from deployment. I hadn't told Emily he was coming, it was meant to be a surprise. Now his arrival couldn't have been timed better. Behind him, half a dozen fellow Marines strode in formation, their uniforms pressed crisp, medals catching the sunlight. The neighborhood, which had been buzzing with whispers, fell silent. Even the children froze, their gift bags dangling at their sides. Karen's smirk was gone. She clutched her binder tighter against her chest, eyes darting between the police and the approaching Marines. Good afternoon, officers, Matthew said, his voice calm but carrying weight. He stopped at the edge of the yard, glancing briefly at me before kneeling down to Emily's height. Happy birthday, kiddo. Emily squealed again, wrapping her arms around his neck. The crowd softened with a collective, ah. Even the younger officer's mouth twitched into a smile. Karen, however, recovered quickly. She jabbed a finger toward the group. What is this? Some kind of stunt? You can't just bring, she sputtered, searching for words. Military people into a neighborhood gathering. Matthew stood, his height and composure towering over her. Ma'am, we were invited guests. We've come to celebrate my niece's birthday. His gaze hardened just slightly. Is there a problem with that? Karen flinched but didn't back down. Yes, there's a problem. This is a clear violation of HOA bylaws. No public displays, no unauthorized gatherings, and certainly no uniformed processions. It intimidates the neighbors. The younger officer raised an eyebrow. Intimidates? They look like they're here to eat cake, ma'am. A few neighbors chuckled. Karen whipped around, glaring at them. Don't you people understand? This sets a dangerous precedent. Next thing you know, we'll have motorcycles revving at midnight and parades down the street. The taller officer held up his hand. Ma'am, enough. These gentlemen aren't breaking any laws by being here. Karen's face turned crimson. She shifted her binder under her arm and hissed, Then I'll file a noise complaint. These people don't belong here. Matthew tilted his head slightly, his tone calm but sharp. With respect, ma'am, we've coordinated with the city before attending. There's nothing illegal about Marines celebrating a child's birthday. We've got clearance. Her eyes widened. Clearance? From who? Matthew reached into his jacket pocket. The street fell silent again. Slowly he pulled out a folder, not the flimsy HOA kind Karen clutched, but an official-looking document, sealed and stamped. He handed it to the taller officer. Paperwork from the city events office. My unit filed it ahead of time to make sure this wouldn't cause any issues. The officer scanned the page, then passed it to his partner. The younger officer nodded, impressed. It's legit. Karen froze, her mouth opening and closing like she had swallowed sand. You can't just, this isn't. Ma'am, the taller officer cut in firmly, this family has every right to hold this gathering. Everything is cleared. Unless you have something else concrete, we're done here. The crowd shifted, murmurs rippling. Some neighbors clapped softly. One child whispered, "Cool," as he pointed at the Marines. Emily tugged my sleeve, her voice hushed with awe. Daddy, are they here to protect my party? I smiled down at her. Something like that, sweetheart. Karen, though, wasn't ready to quit. She turned on me, her voice sharp. You think you've won, don't you? You think parading your brother and his soldiers around makes you untouchable? I held her gaze steadily. I don't think I'm untouchable. I just think my daughter deserves a birthday without harassment. Her eyes blazed. She spun back to the officers. You have to stop this. You can't let them stay. The younger officer shook his head, handing the paperwork back to Matthew. Ma'am, everything here checks out. You need to calm down. Karen's face twisted, part fury, part disbelief. Calm down? Calm down? When a mob of uniformed men take over a suburban street. Matthew's voice cut through, even and steady. We're not a mob, ma'am. We're Marines. And today we're family. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint rustle of balloons in the summer breeze. Karen's lips trembled. She looked at the officers, then at the crowd. But for once, the neighborhood wasn't rallying behind her. People were filming. Parents were smiling. Even Mr. Ramirez had crossed his arms and muttered, about time someone stood up to her. The taller officer finally spoke, his voice low but commanding. Ma'am, we need to talk. Karen blinked, startled. Talk? About what? The officer gestured to the curb, away from the children. His expression was stern now. About the consequences of false reporting. The color drained from her face. False reporting? I told you there was a violation. You told us there was an illegal gathering, noise disturbance and safety hazard, the officer replied firmly. We found none of those. That's wasting police resources. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Phones stayed raised, recording every word. Karen's hand shook as she clutched her binder tighter. For the first time she looked cornered. Emily tugged my sleeve again, whispering, Daddy, what's happening to her? I bent down, lowering my voice. She's finally facing the truth. But even as I said it, Karen's eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape, for some shred of control to cling to. The taller officer stepped closer to Karen, his voice sharp. Ma'am, I suggest you stop talking before you make this worse. The officer's warning hung in the humid afternoon air like a hammer about to drop. The neighbors stayed frozen, their phones steady, capturing every frame of Karen's unraveling. Emily pressed closer into my side, watching wide-eyed as if sensing that this moment was bigger than her birthday balloons and cake. But Karen wasn't the kind to fold. Her lips thinned to a straight line, her knuckles white against the HOA binder she clutched like a shield. False reporting? She hissed, her voice rising. You're accusing me of wasting resources when this man, she jabbed her finger at me, has brought an armed unit into a suburban cul-de-sac? The younger officer's brows knit together. Ma'am, they're not armed. They're in uniform attending a private family event. They're intimidating, she shouted, her voice cracking. Look at them. Standing there like they're on patrol. This is harassment. This is military overreach in a residential neighborhood. A few chuckles rose from the crowd, quickly stifled. Someone muttered, she's lost it. Another neighbor whispered, this is going to go viral. Matthew didn't flinch. He stood calm, shoulders squared, his fellow Marines at his side like statues. Ma'am, he said evenly, we're not here to intimidate anyone. We're here for Emily. That's it. Karen's face twisted. Don't patronize me. I know exactly what this is. A spectacle. A way to make me look bad. She spun toward the officers again, her voice trembling with desperation. You can't just let them stay here. They're disrupting the entire community. The taller officer exhaled slowly. Ma'am, the only disruption we've seen so far has been caused by you. The crowd murmured again, louder this time. Phones tilted higher. Karen's ears burned red as she turned, realizing just how many people were recording her meltdown. For the first time, her usual armor, intimidation by sheer volume, wasn't working. But instead of retreating, she doubled down. Fine, she said, her voice shaking but loud enough for everyone to hear. If the police won't protect this neighborhood, then I'll take matters into my own hands. Emily gasped, tugging my sleeve. Daddy, what does she mean? I steadied my voice. She's bluffing. Karen marched across the lawn, snatching at the corner of the bounce house. With a sudden yank, she pulled the power cord from the extension outlet. The motor sputtered, the colorful walls sagging immediately. A few children squealed as the structure began to collapse in slow motion. Hey! I shouted, rushing forward. What are you doing? Karen's face was wild now, flushed and defiant. Removing a hazard before it kills someone. The officers moved quickly, stepping between us before the scene escalated further. The younger one barked, Ma'am, that's enough. But Karen wasn't listening. She waved the cord in the air like a trophy. There. No more violation. No more danger. Now you have no excuse to ignore this circus. Emily burst into tears, clutching my hand. She ruined it, Daddy. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, fury boiling in my chest. Plug it back in, Karen. Now. Karen sneered. Or what? You'll sick your little army on me? The crowd gasped at her words. Matthew stepped forward slowly, his posture still calm but his eyes sharp. Ma'am, I suggest you hand that cord back before you create a real safety hazard. Karen's laugh was high-pitched, almost hysterical. Oh, please. What are you going to do? Arrest me? You can't. You're not cops. You're just soldiers playing dress-up in my neighborhood. The taller officer stepped in, his patience gone. Enough, ma'am. Give me the cord. Right now. Karen clutched it tighter, holding it against her chest like contraband. No. Not until you shut this down. I'm not going to stand by while rules are broken in front of my face. Emily sobbed harder, burying her face into my side. My jaw clenched. Around us, the neighbors whispered furiously, the mood shifting from shock to disgust. Mrs. Lopez's voice rose from across the lawn. Karen, for God's sake, stop. It's a little girl's birthday. Karen snapped her head toward her, eyes blazing. Don't tell me what to do. You'll be the first one I report after this, Maria. I've seen your hedges. Karen, the officer barked. She froze, her chest heaving, the cord trembling in her hand. For a second, the whole street held its breath. Then the younger officer stepped closer, lowering his voice but making sure the crowd could still hear. Ma'am, interfering with private property like this can and will be considered criminal mischief. Do you want to go down that road? Karen's face drained, her eyes flickering between the cord, the officers, and the lenses of half a dozen phones aimed at her. The cornered look returned, wild and calculating. And then, in one swift motion, she dropped the cord. It landed limp in the grass. The bounce house gave a sigh and fully collapsed, the colorful vinyl folding in on itself. Kids whimpered, parents shook their heads. Karen raised her chin, trying to recover. There. Problem solved. Now there's no reason for them to be here. Matthew stepped forward, his boots crunching the grass. He leaned down, plugging the cord back into the outlet. The motor roared, and the bounce house slowly rose again, bright and defiant. The children cheered through their sniffles, clapping as the structure regained its shape. Karen's jaw dropped. You can't just undo what I... The taller officer turned on her sharply. Ma'am, enough. This is your last warning. Any more interference and you will be charged. Do I make myself clear? Karen's face twitched, torn between fear and rage. This isn't over, she spat. Not by a long shot. The officer's eyes narrowed. You're right. It's not. The officer reached for his radio, his gaze still locked on Karen. Dispatch, this is Unit 14. I may need to bring someone in for questioning. The bounce house reinflated with a triumphant hum, its walls swelling upright again as children clapped and squealed with relief. The sound was almost defiant, a bright counterpoint to the tension that still knotted the street. Karen's chest heaved as she glared at the officer's hand still hovering near his radio. Her binder had slipped under her arm, papers jutting out like broken feathers. She looked around for support, but all she met were neighbors' phones, neighbors' stares, neighbors' judgment. And then Matthew stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm presence carried more authority than Karen's shrill shouting ever could. Officers, he said evenly, before this escalates further, there's something you should see. Karen whipped her head toward him, suspicion etched in every line of her face. What now? Another stunt? More theatrics. Matthew ignored her. He reached into his breast pocket, producing a slim leather case. He flipped it open, revealing an official badge glinting under the sun. The younger officer's brows lifted. You're? Matthew gave a small nod. Captain Matthew Cole, United States Marine Corps. My unit is here on leave. And yes, he held the case steady for the crowd to see, we coordinated this event through proper channels to make sure it wouldn't violate any city ordinances. Gasps rippled through the neighbors. Someone muttered, no wonder they looked so sharp. Karen's mouth fell open, her words stuck somewhere between disbelief and rage. You can't just wave around a badge like that. This is a private neighborhood, not a military base. Matthew's eyes stayed steady on her. Correct. Which is why we respected procedure. We ensured there were no conflicts, no violations, no risks. Everything was cleared in advance. He handed the case to the taller officer, who inspected it carefully. After a moment, he handed it back with a respectful nod. It's legitimate. Karen let out a strangled laugh, desperate and brittle. You think this changes anything? You can't just march your Marines into people's backyards. It's intimidation, pure and simple. One of the Marines behind Matthew shifted, his voice quiet but firm. Ma'am, the only intimidation happening here is coming from you. The crowd stirred again, murmurs growing louder. Mrs. Lopez's phone stayed high, capturing every second. Mr. Ramirez muttered, "Finally, someone tells her." Karen spun on her heel, pointing at me now. "This is all your fault. You planned this ambush. You set me up to look like the villain." I kept my arm around Emily, steadying my voice. "You didn't need any help looking like a villain, Karen. You did that on your own." Emily whispered, still tearful but braver now, "Daddy's right." The younger officer exhaled. "Ma'am, it's time you step back. The party is cleared, the guests are cleared, and there is no violation here." But Karen was past hearing. Her voice rose again, shrill and cracking, her words spilling fast. "You're all against me. The HOA, the neighbors, even the police. I'm the only one standing up for what's right. You'll see, I'll file complaints. I'll have every one of you written up. These Marines won't protect you when the board finds out." Matthew cut across her rant, his voice calm but commanding. "Ma'am, let me be clear. The city knows about this event. The HOA secretary cleared it. The police see no issue. The only disturbance today has come from you." The taller officer's jaw tightened. He unclipped his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 14. Confirming we have no violations here, but we do have a disruptive individual refusing to comply." Karen's face drained. You're reporting me?" The younger officer met her stare, firm but even. "Yes, ma'am. At this point, you're the only one creating a disturbance." The neighbors' whispers turned into open murmurs. A couple of kids giggled nervously watching Karen flail. Parents exchanged looks that said what they didn't dare say aloud. She finally crossed the line. Karen clutched her binder tighter, her voice breaking now. "You can't do this to me. I've lived here for 15 years. I keep this neighborhood in order. Without me, this place would fall apart." Matthew's gaze didn't waver. "With respect, ma'am, order isn't the same as control." The silence that followed was thick. For once, Karen had no ready retort. Her mouth opened, closed, but no sound came out. The binder sagged slightly in her grip. Emily peeked up at me, whispering, "Daddy, is she in trouble?" I squeezed her shoulder gently. "She might be, sweetheart. And maybe that's the lesson she needs." But Karen wasn't finished, not yet. Her eyes darted again, searching for footing, searching for an angle. Finally, she jabbed her finger toward the Marines. "If this is really official, then prove it. Show us your documents. Show us every permit, every form. Otherwise, this whole thing is a sham." Matthew didn't flinch. He reached into his folder again, pulling out another set of papers. He unfolded them slowly, deliberately, holding them out for the officers to see. The younger officer scanned them, then looked up with a small, almost amused smile. "Ma'am, it's all here. Event cleared. Noise levels anticipated and within legal range. Parking accounted for. Even fire safety checked." He handed the papers back to Matthew, then turned squarely toward Karen. "Every box checked. You've got nothing." The crowd erupted in quiet laughter, some clapping softly. Phones caught every second. Karen's face burned crimson. Her voice cracked as she tried one last desperate push. "This isn't over. You can't humiliate me like this in front of everyone." Matthew's voice was calm, steady, final. "No one humiliated you, ma'am. You did that yourself." The taller officer stepped forward, his expression firm. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me for a formal warning. We'll sort this out downtown." Karen froze, binder slipping from her hands, papers scattering across the grass. Karen's binder hit the grass with a dull thud, papers fluttering like startled birds. For once, she didn't scramble to pick them up. She just stood there, face pale, lips moving but no words coming out. The neighbors leaned in, phones held higher, the silence almost theatrical. The taller officer broke it. "Ma'am, step aside. We need to speak with you." Karen blinked, shaking her head as if waking from a dream. No, this is a mistake. You don't understand. I was only protecting the neighborhood. I was only..." Matthew's voice cut across hers, calm and steady. "Ma'am, you escalated a peaceful birthday party into a police matter. You disrupted children. You created a scene. And now you're obstructing law enforcement." Her jaw clenched. "Obstructing? I was helping." The younger officer took a step closer, his tone firm. No, ma'am. You lied to dispatch. You described this as an illegal gathering. You said it was a safety hazard. That's false reporting. And it's serious. A ripple of murmurs ran through the neighbors. Phones zoomed in. Karen's eyes darted, desperate. But you don't know what it's like living here. If I don't enforce the rules, no one does. Mrs. Lopez's voice rang from across the lawn. You don't enforce rules, Karen? You bully people. Several neighbors nodded, emboldened. Mr. Ramirez muttered, about time someone said it. Karen's eyes flashed, but the old fire was flickering out. Her power, the fear she thrived on, was gone, replaced by laughter and cameras. Matthew reached into his pocket again. This time he pulled out a small leather wallet and flipped it open, revealing an official military identification card with his name and rank. He held it steady, his gaze on the officers. Captain Matthew Cole, he said again, voice measured. This wasn't just a casual visit. My unit and I cleared this event formally. Every detail is authorized. The taller officer nodded, recognizing the weight of the ID. He turned it over in his hand briefly before handing it back with respect. Thank you, Captain. That clears up any question. The younger officer turned back to Karen. Ma'am, you demanded proof. There it is. Do you have anything to say now? Karen's face twisted, her eyes glassy. This is some conspiracy. You're all against me. The HOA board will hear about this. I'll take it to the city council if I have to. You think a badge scares me? Matthew didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. It's not about scaring you, ma'am. It's about facts. And the fact is this family did everything right. You're the only one in violation. The neighbors clapped this time, openly, their voices rising in approval. Emily peeked out from my side, her tears drying, her eyes widening with awe as she looked at her uncle. She whispered, Daddy? Uncle Matt's like a superhero. I smiled down at her. Something like that, sweetheart. Karen's breathing grew shallow, fast. She bent down suddenly, scooping up her fallen papers, clutching them to her chest as if that stack of bylaws could still save her. This isn't over, she shrieked. You'll regret embarrassing me like this. All of you. The taller officer stepped in front of her, blocking her path. His voice was calm but sharp. Ma'am, this is your last chance. Cooperate or we'll have to escalate this formally. And you don't want that. Her eyes darted to the crowd again. Every phone lens was locked on her. Every neighbor was watching. For once, no one was intimidated. No one backed down. She swallowed hard, her throat bobbing. For a brief second she looked like she might cry. But then the stubborn set of her jaw returned. You can't silence me, she whispered hoarsely. You can't. The younger officer exchanged a glance with his partner, then spoke firmly. Ma'am, you're free to file a complaint with the HOA. But right now this party is continuing, and you are to leave this property immediately. If you refuse, we'll treat it as trespassing. The crowd gasped softly. Karen stiffened, her eyes wide. Trespassing? I was trying to help. Matthew's gaze hardened. No. You were trying to control. And today you went too far. The silence that followed was crushing. Even the children sensed the weight of it. Emily slipped her hand into mine, whispering, Is she leaving? I didn't answer yet. Because Karen wasn't moving. She stood frozen, binder pressed to her chest, eyes darting between the officers and the Marines. Her lips trembled as she tried to muster another argument, another excuse. But there was nothing left. The taller officer took one step closer, lowering his voice just enough that the crowd had to lean in. Ma'am, don't make us put this in our report as a chargeable offense. Walk away. Now. Karen's breath hitched. Her knuckles whitened on the binder. For a long moment she stayed locked in place. Then, slowly she took one step back. The crowd exhaled. Phones lowered slightly. Emily let out a tiny cheer, clapping her hands once. But just as relief began to spread, Karen's eyes sharpened again. Her voice, though hoarse, rose in a desperate cry. You think this is over? You think you've won? I'll show you all. You'll regret this day. The taller officer's hand hovered near his cuffs. The younger officer's radio crackled softly at his side. The Marines stayed steady, silent but ready. And the neighborhood held its breath again. The taller officer stepped forward, hand on his cuffs. Ma'am, if you take one more step onto this property, we'll have no choice but to detain you. Karen's foot hovered uncertainly over the grass. Karen's foot hovered over the grass, her body trembling between retreat and defiance. The taller officer's voice was low, measured, and final. Ma'am, I need you to make the right choice. Leave now, or this will become a police matter. The crowd was silent except for the faint hum of the bounce house motor. Even the kids who moments ago had been laughing at its revival, clutched their parents' legs, sensing the storm wasn't over. Karen lowered her foot back onto the sidewalk, but instead of backing away she clutched her binder tighter and thrust her chin out. "I won't be bullied," she spat. "Not by neighbors, not by police, and certainly not by some military circus. This neighborhood has rules. I've upheld them for years. You all think I'm the villain, but I'm the one protecting you from chaos." Her words rang hollow. The neighbors murmured, shaking their heads. A few even laughed under their breath. Mrs. Lopez shouted across the lawn, "Protecting us? From what? Cupcakes and balloons?" More chuckles rippled through the crowd. Karen's face flushed red. "Laugh all you want," she snapped, "but when the HOA fines start rolling in, don't come crying to me." The younger officer crossed his arms. "Ma'am, you're not the HOA president. You can't issue fines." Her mouth opened then closed. She glanced around, realizing every phone was still trained on her. Desperation flickered in her eyes. "I have influence," she muttered. "People listen to me." Mr. Ramirez stepped forward, surprising everyone. He'd always been quiet, the kind of neighbor who avoided conflict. But now his voice rang out, steady and clear. "Not anymore, Karen. We're tired of you." The crowd murmured in agreement. Someone else chimed in, "She called the cops on my daughter last summer for selling lemonade." Another added, "She threatened to tow my car when I parked in front of my own house." Karen whipped her head from side to side, her face contorting. "Lies. All of it. You're twisting the truth." But the tide had turned. The neighbors weren't whispering anymore. They were speaking openly, feeding off each other's courage. For the first time, Karen was outnumbered not just in bodies but in voices. The taller officer nodded toward the gathering. "Sounds like you've made quite a reputation, ma'am." Karen clutched her binder so hard the papers bent. "I kept order. That's what good neighborhoods need. Without me this place would." Matthew cut in, his voice calm but firm. "Without you, families could celebrate without fear. Children could play without harassment. That's not order, ma'am. That's control." Emily tugged my sleeve, whispering, "Uncle Matt's brave." I squeezed her shoulder. "Yes, he is." Karen's eyes glistened, but the stubborn tilt of her chin remained. She turned on me, jabbing her fingers so close I could smell the faint tang of her perfume. "This is all your fault. You think you've humiliated me, but you've just made an enemy you'll regret." The younger officer stepped in immediately, his voice sharp. "Enough. You're done threatening people. Step back." Karen's chest rose and fell rapidly, her breaths uneven. She stumbled a step back, but her voice came out hoarse and defiant. "You think this is justice? No. This is mob rule. This is intimidation. And I won't let it stand." The taller officer pulled a notepad from his pocket, pen scratching across the page. "Ma'am, for the record, you've disrupted a lawful gathering, interfered with private property, and made a false report to dispatch. You're dangerously close to being cited." Karen's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "Cited? You can't." "Yes, we can," the officer said firmly. "And we will if you don't leave right now." The neighbors clapped, louder this time. Phones flashed as cameras caught Karen's paling face. Even the kids cheered softly, their laughter returning in cautious bursts. Karen's voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. "You're all against me. Every one of you. I see it now. I'm the only one who cares about this neighborhood, and you'll regret turning on me." Mrs. Lopez stepped forward, arms crossed. "No, Karen. The only one who'll regret today is you." The crowd murmured louder, voices blending into one chorus of agreement. Karen's face twisted, caught between fury and fear. She backed up another step, but her words tumbled out fast, erratic. "I'll appeal this. I'll go to the city." "Oh." The younger officer raised his hand, cutting her off. "Enough. You're leaving now. If you want to appeal, do it through the proper channels. But this harassment ends here." The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes were on Karen. For the first time she looked truly cornered. Her binder sagged in her arms, her shoulders slumped, her lips trembling as if words had finally abandoned her. Emily leaned up toward me, whispering, "Daddy, did we win?" I kissed the top of her head. "Almost." But Karen, even broken, couldn't let go. She straightened suddenly, her voice brittle but defiant. "This isn't finished. You'll all see. You'll all regret this day." The taller officer's hand shifted toward his cuffs again. "Ma'am, that's enough. Any more and you're coming downtown with us." Karen's breath hitched audibly. She froze. And the neighborhood watched, phones ready, as the woman who had ruled the block through fear for years stood trembling at the edge of total humiliation. The taller officer spoke again, his voice firm. "Ma'am, you've got one last chance. Leave this property, or I'll place you under arrest." Karen's binder slipped in her hands, and for the first time she looked like she might crumble. The taller officer's words hung heavy in the summer air. "Leave this property, or I'll place you under arrest." Every phone camera stayed fixed on Karen, recording her downfall frame by frame. She glanced from the officers to the Marines, then to the crowd of neighbors, each one waiting, each one no longer afraid of her. Her binder slipped lower in her hands. "For the first time since I'd moved into this neighborhood," Karen looked small. I was only trying to help," she stammered, her voice hoarse. The younger officer shook his head. "No, ma'am. You were trying to control. And you crossed the line." Mrs. Lopez's voice cut through from across the lawn. "Go home, Karen. Enough is enough." The crowd murmured in agreement, louder this time, bolder. Even the children sensed the shift. A little boy whispered loudly, "She's in trouble," drawing giggles from the other kids. Karen's cheeks flamed crimson. She spun in a half-circle, eyes darting wildly, searching for some shred of authority to cling to. But all she saw were raised phones and disapproving faces. Her voice cracked as she tried one last time. "You'll all regret this. When the HOA board hears." The taller officer cut her off. "That's not your decision. Right now you're leaving." And this time he stepped forward, guiding her gently but firmly by the elbow toward the sidewalk. Gasps rippled through the neighbors. Phones zoomed in. Karen stiffened, pulling against his grip for a moment, but then realized resistance would only deepen her humiliation. Her binder slipped from her arms, hitting the grass with a muffled thud. Papers scattered again, ignored this time. The younger officer bent, picked up the binder, and handed it back to her without ceremony. "Here, take it, and take yourself home." Karen snatched it, her hand trembling. She glanced once more at me, her eyes sharp with resentment. But when she saw Emily clutching my hand, safe and smiling faintly now, her face crumpled. "You'll regret this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But no one cared. The Marines stepped forward, surrounding Emily as if to shield her, though no one threatened her anymore. Matthew crouched down again, presenting her with a small wrapped gift from his pocket. "Happy birthday, kiddo," he said softly. Emily gasped, her tears forgotten. "Thank you, Uncle Matt." She hugged him fiercely, and the crowd melted into smiles and applause. Karen froze, binder clutched to her chest. Her eyes swept the cheering neighbors, the smiling children, the Marines standing tall. She opened her mouth as if to scream again, but no sound came out. The taller officer gestured firmly toward her house. "Go. Now." And this time Karen obeyed. Her sandals slapped against the pavement as she stalked down the sidewalk, her shoulders stiff, her binder clutched like a lifeline. Neighbors filmed every step. A few parents clapped, some openly cheering. The humiliation was complete. Emily tugged my sleeve, her eyes wide. "Daddy, did she leave?" I smiled, kneeling to her height. "Yes, sweetheart. She's gone. And she won't ruin your day again." The bounce house roared behind us, its bright walls swaying in the breeze. Kids squealed as they scrambled back inside, laughter returning like sunlight after a storm. Parents set down gifts, chatting with relief. The neighborhood atmosphere shifted, from tense and fearful to celebratory and united. The Marines joined in quietly, handing out small tokens they had brought for Emily and her friends. Patches, challenge coins, little souvenirs that made the children's eyes light up. Matthew lifted Emily onto his shoulders, carrying her toward the cake table. The officers relaxed finally, their hands off radios, their posture easier. The younger one even smiled faintly. "Well," he muttered, "that was one of the strangest calls I've had in a while." The taller officer chuckled softly. "At least it ended well. For most of you anyway." He glanced down the street where Karen had disappeared into her house, blinds already snapping shut behind her windows. Neighbors laughed, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Mrs. Lopez called out, "Cake's on us if the officers want some." Emily's face glowed as she leaned down from Matthew's shoulders, whispering in my ear, "Daddy, this is the best birthday ever." I swallowed hard, emotion tightening my throat. "You deserve it, Em." But even as the crowd laughed, clapped, and joined the celebration, my eyes lingered down the street. Karen's house sat dark and silent, blinds drawn like a fortress. I knew she wasn't finished. People like Karen never quit quietly. But for today, for this moment, justice had won. Mini cliffhanger, end of Block 9. As the candles on Emily's cake flickered and neighbors cheered, a shadow moved behind the blinds of Karen's house. She was watching. And she wasn't done. The candles on Emily's cake flickered in the evening breeze, their little flames glowing against the fading golden light. Neighbors gathered around the table, their voices softening into a chorus of happy birthday. Emily's smile stretched ear to ear, cheeks flushed with joy. She leaned forward and blew the candles out in one breath, her laughter ringing through the cul-de-sac. The bounce house hummed steadily behind us, filled with squealing children. Plates of cake were passed from hand to hand, parents chatting freely for the first time without casting nervous glances toward Karen's house. The Marines blended easily into the celebration, laughing, handing out coins and patches, even joining the kids for a few bounce house turns that left everyone doubled over with laughter. The officers stayed a while too, lingering near the edge of the yard. They accepted paper plates piled with cake, their postures finally relaxed. One of them joked that this was the best call they'd had all month. The other nodded, smiling faintly as he said, "This is how communities should be." I glanced at Emily, who was perched on Matthew's shoulders, clutching her new gift with both hands. Her eyes shone in the soft light. "Daddy," she whispered, leaning down, "this is the best birthday ever." My throat tightened. For a moment I let myself soak it in, the laughter, the relief, the unity. After hours of tension, the neighborhood felt lighter, freer. It was more than just a party now, it was a turning point. But even as I smiled, I noticed movement at the far end of the street. Behind Karen's blinds, a shadow flickered. She was watching. Always watching. Matthew noticed too. His voice was low as he stepped beside me. "She won't quit, you know. People like her, they never do." I nodded. "I know. But today she lost. And everyone saw it." Matthew's lips curved into a small smile. "Sometimes that's all it takes to break the spell." The crowd cheered again as Emily cut into the cake, frosting smudged on her fingers. She giggled, offering a piece to one of the Marines. Phones snapped photos, neighbors laughed, and for once, it wasn't Karen setting the tone of the block. It was us. It was community. As the sun dipped lower, painting the street in amber, Mrs. Lopez came up to me, her voice warm but firm. "You know, this was overdue. Someone had to stand up to her. And you did it." I shook my head. It wasn't just me. It was all of us finally saying enough. She smiled knowingly. "Still, you gave us the moment. Sometimes it takes one person to light the match." Her words lingered with me as I looked around the yard. Parents were talking with neighbors they'd never dared to confront before. Kids were running freely. Even the Marines, outsiders only hours ago, were part of something bigger now. And just across the street, Karen's house sat in silence. Her binder, once her weapon, was clutched behind drawn blinds. For the first time she wasn't feared. She was pitted. Emily tugged my sleeve again. "Daddy, can I tell you a secret?" I crouched down, meeting her eyes. "Of course." She leaned close, whispering, "When Uncle Matt showed up, I wasn't scared anymore. Not even a little. I knew he wouldn't let her win." I hugged her tight, my chest heavy with pride. "That's because you've got people who love you, Emily. And as long as we're together, no one like Karen can take that away." Her arms wrapped around my neck, and for that moment, the whole day's chaos melted into gratitude. As dusk turned to night, the crowd slowly dispersed. Parents gathered sleepy children, Marines saluted and said their goodbyes, and the officers headed back to their cruiser. The street grew quieter, filled only with the laughter of the last few kids bouncing until their energy gave out. Before he left, Matthew clapped me on the shoulder. "You did good today, brother. Don't let her get under your skin. People saw who she really is. That matters." I nodded. "Thank you. For being here. For everything." He smiled faintly. "Family first. Always." By the time I carried Emily inside, she was nearly asleep, her arms wrapped around her new gift, frosting still smudged on her cheek. I tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Happy birthday, Em. You're stronger than you know." She stirred, murmuring, "Best birthday ever." I stood there for a moment, watching her drift into sleep, the sound of the bounce house deflating outside as neighbors helped fold it away. And I realized that the day had given us more than a birthday memory. It had given us proof that unity could topple fear. The outro came naturally, as if the story itself spoke the words. Karen had spent years controlling the neighborhood with threats, rules, and fear. But all it took was one birthday party, one act of defiance, and the courage of a few to expose her. In the end, she wasn't the enforcer of order she claimed to be, she was just a bully silenced by truth, justice, and community. And Emily got her birthday. Not ruined. not cancelled. Celebrated in the way it should have been, surrounded by love, laughter, and even a little bit of heroism. So I'll ask you, what would you do if a neighbor tried to shut down your child's birthday? Would you fight back or would you let them win? Let us know in the comments below. And if you believe in standing up to bullies and protecting what matters most, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and join us for more HOA stories just like this. Because sometimes the best way to defeat control is simply to celebrate life louder than fear.